So BYOD revolution means IT service management evolution. So BYOD isn't new. It really started to come about as the term started to emerge back in 2007. But BYOD has been going on for a lot longer than that. You know, we've had CDs, USBs. We've found ways to get access to corporate data and applications and work. We've used Dropbox, for example. But it's just now it's becoming a lot more proliferation with all the different devices that people now want to connect to the corporate network, into the organisation. I want to kick off by just looking at very quickly, some analysts' predictions for BYOD, just to get a sense of where they believe we are. And then also just want to explore again quite quickly what I see as some of the key drivers, just the ones that I see are key for organisations adopting bring your own device. And then we'll get into the core of the presentation, which is about what does that mean to IT service management. Now it's going to be a pretty rapid fire journey because I'm actually going to look at each of the 26 processes within ITIL and explore what BYOD means for them. For some it means a lot more than others, and for some it's just more of a consideration. There is a white paper that supports this presentation that's freely available, you don't have to register, from the Macanta website under the resources section. And that goes into a lot more detail of the impact on each process. This I'm just going to give a taste of what it actually means. So let's look at some predictions for up to the next 6 years. So Gartner have said 38% of companies expect to stop providing devices to workers in 2 years' time. So 38 companies saying, yes, you have to bring your own device, we're not going to provide them anymore. Gartner also said in 3 years' time, half of employers will require their employees to bring their own device. Forrester said over 70% of mobile professionals will be conducting their work on their personal devices, either devices that belong to them, as opposed to devices provided by the organisation. And Gartner also said 85% of companies will be providing some sort of BYOD program in 6 years' time. What are some of the drivers? There's lots of drivers for organisations adopting BYOD. And I've just picked on a couple of the ones I think are the key ones. The first one, it's all about employee satisfaction, productivity, and controlling your own work-life balance, if you like. So the Australian National Audit Office, for those who don't know, it's an independent government organisation, looks across 300 agencies and reports into Parliament. And last year they did a big infrastructure uplift, if you like, to support a BYOD environment. And they reckon that productivity rose around 20% as a direct result of introduction of BYOD and updating the infrastructure to support that. And the staff satisfaction climbed by 15%. So the benefits that BYOD are bringing, and there's lots of other reports about the benefits organisations are seeing, it's one of the key drivers for organisations to start looking at this, because they're fairly impressive pictures, statistics. And Gary Pettigrove, who's the CIO at the Australian National Audit Office, he said mailboxes are smaller, people are responding faster, and employees say they have a better work-life balance, we're a quicker, smarter and more efficient organisation. So BYOD is allowing me on my personal device, not carrying 2 or 3 devices around. If I want to check my mailbox the night before I go to work, I can do. If I want to get up early on my own device whilst I'm commuting to work and do my mailbox, I can. I don't have to wait to get into the organisation or log onto an organisational device to do so. I can work when I want on my personal device. So that's one of the drivers as well, a better work-life balance. I choose to work when I want to on my device. These guys are also a big driver. Yeah? Gen Y, millennials, I can never say that word, I really struggled in 1999. Millennials. They've grown up with a unique life base, if you like. They've grown up connected to each other wherever, whenever, however, and when they enter the workforce, they're expecting the same. A lot of these guys coming out of uni where they brought their own device, done all the lectures and everything else on their own device, and they want to bring them into the organisation. And when an organisation is saying no, that can be a big differentiator in terms of attraction, talent attraction, retention, and engagement of that talent. And they're going to start talking very quickly about how archaic your organisation is across all the social media channels that they use. Okay? So they expect to be connected. And CIO.com said they don't want to unplug from work on the weekends and after hours like their older counterparts. They want technology that keeps up with their lifestyle.
They want, don't they?
They do want. And if you think they're bad, and I can't remember who's now coined it, not sure which analyst agencies, one of them has said now Gen C is next generation connected. Yeah, they've never been unconnected. So the bigger expectation is coming along as well. So some of the drivers: productivity, work-life balance, staff, talent engagement, attraction and retention, some of the key drivers. So it is going to be on the increase, so what does that mean for IT service management? Well, as I said in the introduction, it's going to be a rapid ride throughout the life cycle. And for some processes it's, I wouldn't say no-brainer, but as you see as we go, we just need to be aware that the organisation's now got BYOD. For some other processes, a lot more consideration, as we'll see. So let's start where we should start, with service strategy. So strategy management for IT services is going to be very important when we're thinking about when the organisation starts to think about introducing BYOD. And remember, this isn't an IT-driven initiative. IT is the enabler for a BYOD program. Okay? So we need to determine what the organisation's business goals, priorities, goals for future growth, employee enablement, and technology innovation and adoption when we're thinking about introducing BYOD, and IT is asked to participate in that because it is a big part of it, although it's not an IT decision. So when we're looking at our BYOD intent, if you like, does it fit in with all of those things that the organisation's priorities and goals are as well? Because remember, it shouldn't be just, some exec got the latest tablet for Christmas and now wants to connect it to the network. That's not a business driver. Yeah? And that's how a lot of BYOD starts off.
Absolutely sure.
Absolutely sure. Does it happen? Yes, it does. Should it be the driver for a whole BYOD program? No.
Depends on the exec.
Sorry?
Depends on the exec.
I know, and I've seen it happen. I've seen tablets rolled out as a pilot to the execs, and suddenly the organisation had a massive BYOD program on its hand, and it wasn't ready for it. And it didn't align with the organisation's strategy at that point.
So they changed the strategy, obviously.
Yeah, just to fit. So what about service portfolio management and financial management? Well, like any new service, BYOD as a service should go through the steps of define what it looks like, analyse it, and approve it, and then charter the service. Again, rather than it just growing up on its own. So in terms of defining what BYOD is going to look like, some of the questions service portfolio management are going to have to look at, like, well, who is entitled? Who is allowed to BYOD? Who are they? Where are they? When are they going to want to use the BYOD service? Is it all the time? Is it whilst they're at home, on the road, or everywhere? What applications are they going to want to use and have access to? What corporate data are they going to want to have access to? There's a whole set of questions specific to this service that are going to have to be asked so that we can clearly define the scope and the nature of the BYOD service. So it's no different to any other service, apart from the questions need to be quite specific in terms of, and a lot of questions around security, obviously. From a financial management perspective, yes, we need to look at return on investment and value on investment. And some of the drivers I talked about before are the value on investment. But what's the financial return? So for a lot of organisations now that don't have to provide devices, obviously there's a reduction in cost there. However, there can be a vast cost in updating the infrastructure, security, etc. that comes around with BYOD. So those things have to be balanced, dependence on how many legacy systems that you've got that are going to really have to be upgraded or replaced to support a BYOD environment. And also the other thing that financial management needs to consider is how do we recompense employees for bringing their own device, and what's that going to cost us? Because if I've got to use my device, I want you to give me some sort of recompense for doing that. Okay? And there's been some big discussions in the US, I think in California, have been doing some laws coming in about what the organisations have to. Up to now, I think it's been a bit of a choice whether they have. And now they're saying, yes, you have to. So organisations go, oh my God, what's the implications for my BYOD programme now? Business relationship management will be key as well. If we do have that situation where we have the execs who've got the latest tablet, blah, 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 it should be business relationship management to talking to those people about what is it they're trying to do? What business issue are they trying to overcome? What are they trying to get access to and why? And turn that into an IT says, yes, we can, as opposed to you shouldn't be doing that. What is it that they're trying to do? So understanding what the business drivers are. What devices do they want access to? Or what devices are they already trying to use? Yeah? And I've got my credit card and I've got an internet connection and I can buy an app that suddenly allows me to get access to corporate apps and data. Yeah? What is it they're trying to do? And getting on the front foot. This is all about stopping shadow IT or containing it or managing it or seeing shadow IT as an opportunity. So business relationship management, again, is important to making sure there is a business driver to what's being asked for. Okay? And keeping that relationship going. More and more devices are becoming available to us, month by month and not day by day. And is the business now trying to use another additional device? If so, is there a business driver? Should we add it to our portfolio? And demand management needs to understand where the demand for BYOD is coming from. And demand management will get a lot of feed input from service asset and configuration management, capacity management. And as you all know, your ITSM practitioners, none of these processes stand alone. They're all feeding and providing information to other processes as well. So we need to understand is there going to be a demand? Yeah, that's service portfolio management will need to understand that as well, because if there isn't going to be a massive demand, why are we providing it? It depends on the nature of the organisation. If you've got an organisation that's primarily made up of, Gen Ys, you're probably going to have to provide it. If it's an ageing organisation, then maybe there isn't a high demand for it. And maybe there's just demand in sectors of the organisation. So we need to understand where that demand's going to come from. BYOD policy. And I won't ask the guys who put their hands up again. But when I did this at Lead It, I asked who had some sort of BYOD in the organisation. And about half the hands went up, some sort of form of BYOD. And of those people I asked who has seen or is aware of the BYOD policy. And about every hand went down bar 2. Okay. This is the real issue. Now this is why I've included this slide. We all know BYOD policy isn't an idle process, but it should be part of service strategy, that we actually make sure that we have a sound BYOD policy. And this is the reason why. This was researched last year by Fortinet, who said they researched Gen Y, 3,200 of them, and over half of them said they would bypass any BYOD policy at work. Now I'll couch that by saying if they didn't believe it was allowing them to do the job they should be able to do at work. Not just because I'm going to do it deliberately because it's there, because they didn't see that it was the right policy in place and it hindered their ability to access information and to do work on their devices. So the key thing about BYOD policy, it should be clear and concise, and it should be visible. Okay? It should be in your face all the time that this is the BYOD policy. Because without it, this is why organisations are going, security risk. Yeah? Because people will bypass it. They don't understand it, they don't know what it is. And couch it in a positive sense. Yeah? These are the things you can do as part of BYOD, as opposed to these are the things thou shalt not do. So everyone goes, ugh. Put it in a positive. And as I say, make it visible and make it no nonsense. Yeah? Just say it as it is, rather than just colourful language, and no one ever reads it. You might want to make a part of the performance review process that the employee has read the latest version of the BYOD policy. Just have key elements of it on the walls around the organisation. Yeah? And as it changes, let people know. But this is really core to any BYOD activity in the organisation. No nonsense and visible. As we've already touched on, these workers, Gen Y, raised to consider access to information a right. I have the right to access my work information on my device, not a privilege. Thank you very much, organisation, for the privilege. No, it's a right. So service strategy portfolio needs to think about the questions to ask. We need to look at the financial aspects. We need to ensure business relationship management engages the business and the organisation. And we need to make sure we have a handle on the demand. So what about service design? Well, one of the unsung hero processes, if you like, design coordination. Who does design coordination? Nobody. There you go. And really, design coordination is just an umbrella across all the design activities that are happening in the organisation. And what this process now has to do is that check that everything we're designing, we are now designing for mobile. Not for the desktop, not just for the web, we're designing for mobile. Okay, so that's really what the consideration for design coordination is, to make sure that's done. And we don't do it as an after effect. Well, we've designed a new service, now we need to make it mobile as well. We're going to redesign it. Service catalogue management will have a big part to play. So this is where it should be telling us, what is the BYOD service? What devices can I connect to the network? And the thing about the service catalogue in this perspective, if you give people a lot of choices, and I know there's, when I say a lot, a fair amount of choices in terms of the devices that I can attach, the most common ones that are out there, obviously the support implications and capacity, but if you can give people a choice and put it in the catalogue, these are all the different devices you can use and connect. These are all the different apps that we can give you to access corporate data, blah, blah, blah. It's seen more as this is a good thing, here's all your choices, as opposed to these are the things you can't have. But it also provides a structure to say, in the catalogue, it's told me everything that can be connected to the network. So if I detect a rogue device trying to connect, this is my structure to say, well, hold on, we told you all these were all the things you could use. Why have you tried to go around the BYOD policy and around what we said was available to connect a rogue device? So it gives you that structure to have that conversation, because it was absolutely clear what devices were allowed connectivity to the network as well. Service catalogue can point to other things like, if you want to say what the policy is, this is where you go. If you want to know how to get support, this is where you go. So the service catalogue can be very good, rather than just saying we have a BYOD service, explicitly state what apps are available and what devices are part of that as well. Service level management. Again, in a service level agreement, we're going to need to consider the inclusion of things like, what is the obligation of the employee when they connect a device to the network? Well, A, it should be an approved device, but B, are we going to say something like, you have to have a manufacturer's warranty on that device? It's an option, some organisations are doing that sort of thing. Also, what are the obligations or the rights of the organisation itself? If you leave the organisation or lose your phone or it's stolen, what rights do I have as the organisation to wipe that device? Which could include all personal data. Or am I just going to wipe corporate data? Because and I'll talk a bit about containerization, by the ability to do that. So it has to be clear in the service level agreement what the obligations are on both sides and both parties. So there should also be in there service level targets. So what's the service level target for connectivity of an approved device? How quickly will it be connected? Because I don't want to wait 8 weeks to be connected. It's an approved device, just do it. And what are the service level targets for support, if I do need support for the device? So obligations and service level targets. And again, the service level agreement should point to the policy, not repeat it. Not duplicate it, just point to where it can be found. Availability management. This it could be quite a big one. In terms of you could be now making services that were generally available, and they're being generic, generally available 9 to 5, or core office hours, now available 24/7. Because I can now access them from wherever I am, wherever in the world, whatever time I want, which I may not have done before. So what's that now going to mean to make all these services that now can be accessed highly available at all those times? So we might have had different levels of availability because of low usage. Like overnight, we don't need high levels of availability, and we can utilise the elements supporting that high availability in the day elsewhere. So availability management, big considerations. And another key one will be capacity management, a big one. Because these devices are bandwidth hungry. They're delay sensitive. They will time out if they can't connect. Yeah. So yes, great, you've got a BYOD environment and I can bring my own device, I just can't use it because there isn't the capacity to do it. I can't connect. Yeah. So again, capacity management will have to work closely with demand management to say where are we seeing the demand going to make sure I have sufficient capacity across the organisation, across the network to allow all these devices to connect. And service asset and configuration management, or however you're looking at the trend of people taking up BYOD, is going to be a key input to capacity to say, oh my God, in 6 months I'm going to need to double our capacity to cope with this across the network. So it's no good introducing, fanfare, we're going to allow BYOD and then not have the underpinning infrastructure and some of the high availability and capacity so that people get a consistent experience. It's no good, I'm doing some work at the moment for a client in Canberra, and I remote access every other week, and it's not consistent service, it's a pain in the proverbial. One day connectivity is great, it's up all day, the next day I'm rebooting 20 times to re-establish connectivity. That's not going to give us that customer satisfaction and high productivity that the guy from A&AO talked about in the beginning of the presentation. So capacity management will be crucial. IT service continuity management. A BYOD an organisation that allows BYOD, or even one that's mobile, but BYOD is probably more because I'll have my own device with me, can have a great advantage in a disaster situation. If it's denial of access, for example, to wherever you work, and you've got your own device and you can actually work remotely, you can still collaborate and carry on the business that you were doing. Whereas if you were using an organisation device and had to be in the organisation, work stops. So it can have the advantage about making your organisation mobile with your own device in the event of a disaster. It depends on the nature of the disaster, obviously. If the disaster stops connectivity, well, it doesn't matter where you are, you can't connect. But in some circumstances it can. But the big concern for IT service continuity management are these two things in the front: audit and security. So working very closely with information security management and asking the question, and I know organisations that I've worked for, and I don't know about yours, but if I said, do you absolutely categorically know what your mission critical applications are and the most sensitive data in your organisation, would you know? Would the organisation know? Have they done an audit to say how valuable to this organisation or how critical to this organisation are these applications and this corporate data? Because we're now going to start giving people connectivity to that on their own devices. So what do we need to do in terms of, if we do have a risk there, how are we going to mitigate it? Because one of the things IT Service Continuity Management looks at is risk mitigation. What's the risk to the organisation? Remembering risk isn't just loss of financial loss, it's reputation and brand. We've just let out all our customer information with their credit card numbers. We've just let out a mailing list of all our customers. That will be across social media like a rash. Yeah? So a big part for making sure you understand what it is you're actually giving people access to. Because it may be that the risk is, and again this is done in conjunction with security management, that it's just too risky in the short term to actually do that. So very important alongside IT security management. But what information security management needs to look at is innovative new ways to overcome the risks that BYOD brings with it. So things like I touched on before, containerization, where I can put a container within a mobile device and that's the only place corporate data is accessed through and stored, if stored at all. Yeah. So if the mobile device, which, mobile is exactly what it said, it's mobile. It can get lost, it can get stolen, it moves. Yeah. So in the event of a security breach or the device being lost or stolen, I can wipe it. I don't touch any personal data, I just wipe that container that takes all the corporate data and the corporate access off the device. So information security management needs to think about things like that. It needs to think about in-flight data encryption. Because chances are I'm on a public Wi-Fi using my BYOD device to access corporate data. It will be intercepted. Yeah. So again, key considerations for information security. How do I ensure that I think about those things? It's not just people connecting their device to the corporate network, it's people wandering about on public Wi-Fis. Yeah. And I didn't read it in detail, but someone was hacking hotels and their Wi-Fi, and for execs who were staying at the organisation, execs staying there. So they were attacking the high corporates through hotel Wi-Fi. So information security, some key considerations there, and lots more, obviously. But information security will have to work very closely with service level management, whoever's looking at the BYOD policy, to say, what are we going to do as an organisation? What are we saying our rights are, and what's the right of the individual? Are we just going to say, oh God, containerisation, blah, 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 just wipe the whole bloody thing? Well, there's implications there for the individual. So we need to think. Supplier management. This is a key topic, if you like, in the industry at the moment, for many reasons. From a BYOD perspective, you may have a supplier that supports one or more devices. You may have suppliers that support all the different devices. A supplier that supports Apple products, a supplier that employs Android products, whatever it might be. You also then may have suppliers who are looking at mobile application device management, suppliers that are looking at mobile infrastructure aspects, and so on and so on and so on. So you suddenly could have 10, 15 suppliers as part of your BYOD service. How do you manage them? Because you're accountable for that one service end to end, and you've suddenly got this network of interdependent suppliers, a lot external to the organisation, and all your internal suppliers as well, and you have to somehow manage that. Okay? So BYOD isn't the only driver for supply management having a focus, because one of the drivers is a lot of organisations now, outsourcing more and more of their business to third parties. And the question will be, how do we manage them all seamlessly? So who's here has heard of SIAM? Okay, so this is the new buzzword in the industry, service integration and management. And it's about putting an organisation layer, if you like, across the organisation that does this service integration of all the internal service providers and all the external service providers. So there's a process for onboarding them, there's a process for managing them, there's a process for governing them across the organisation. So Google SIAM and have a read. So organisations like Tata Consulting are really, really big in that. Fujitsu are on the bandwagon too. So they're all out there talking SIAM to organisations. So supplier management is going to be key because BYOD will bring a lot more suppliers into the... and it still needs to do the basic things like, is it the right supplier, are we going to give support to suppliers, etc. And working out which is the best supplier for the organisation. So some key things to think about within service design, designing for mobile, security and IT service continuity are going to be critical. Supplier management is going to be a big one. A lot more considerations for those processes than there has been before. So what about transition planning and support and change management? Well, transition planning and support will be who does transition planning and support? Yes, one. Again, it's one of those unsung hero processes. So we can skip it over the book, let's get to change management, we get that. Transition planning and support, a key consideration here will be how we transition the organisation to a new way of working, to a new environment, being BYOD, but also thinking about it's not just IT that we need to consider when we're planning. What about all the other parts of the organisation? Security, I'm talking about organisational security. HR, you're going to have a key part to play. Are you going to recompense me? That's an HR issue. You can access my personal information. What does that mean? Legal will have to get involved as well. So a lot of other parties are going to be involved in the transition of the organisation to a BYOD environment. So there's careful planning for those because those people are busy on other things as well. Change management needs to consider every change now, going forward, for its impact on BYOD. So, I go in, I raise a change to change the CRM system. I need to say, is my change going to impact the ability for someone to connect and get the information from the CRM that they were able to last week? So every change now has a new dimension that we need to think about BYOD. Change management also needs to, when it gets a request, to add a new device that hasn't been approved before to be able to connect to the network. It should be asking, is this a totally new device? Or is it just a new version? Is it the iPhone X because of after the iPhone 1? Because if it isn't a totally new device, the chances are that all the security credentials that we knew were on the previous device are on this one. So that changes possibly the steps that change management needs to go through. If it's a totally new device, then absolutely we need to go through all of those checks and balances to make sure that this device can be secured, if you like, and able to connect to the network. Also, if you have change management running onboarding, who onboards people through change management, puts a request in to say, Karen's starting with the organisation on the 1st of January and the change kicks off, get her a laptop, get her security, get her a credit card, a couple of people. You could also add a task, make sure she signed the BYOD policy as part of that induction onboarding. Even if you don't do it through change management, it should be part of your induction process. Yeah. And Karen understands and has signed the BYOD because she signed up to that, the BYOD service.
And exiting.
And exiting, absolutely. So some key considerations for change management. Service asset and configuration management. Big question, do we track all these mobile devices? No one has actually definitively the answer to that yet. But service asset and configuration, most modern CMDB offerings, configuration management database offerings that you'll have in your service management tools, have or offer discovery capabilities. So you can start to discover things that are approved to connect to the network and the things that are trying to connect that shouldn't be. And again, there's a crossover with security there as well. If you store individuals as configuration items, you could have an attribute on there that say they have signed up to the BYOD service. They're bringing their own device. As more people sign up and the attribute against their name gets ticked, that feeds demand management straight away to say we've started the uptake like this and it's going like this. Yeah. Demand management then says capacity management, we have a problem. Yeah. We're going to need to look at our capacity capabilities. So a lot of feeds can come out of service asset and configuration management in terms of the demand as well as detecting connectivity to the network. The other consideration for service asset and configuration management is licensing. So, I have Microsoft Project, I have Adobe, I have Visio, whatever on my desktop. I now want those on 3 other mobile devices, please. My iPhone, on my tablet, and on my personal laptop, whatever it might be. Licensing complications there. Yeah. So service asset configuration management will need to keep track of how many licenses we're going to need for these products now, going forward. So we need to look at what sort of licensing the organisation has in place already. So the big one there for licensing. Release and deployment management. Recommendation is, BYOD should be rolled out in a phased approach. Not we're going to support all these, 50 devices tomorrow. Pick the most popular ones. Again, business relationship management would go out and find out what generally people want to use to connect. We might just, because most people say we actually want to use tablets, not sort of concerned about the phone at the moment. Let's just roll it out. So do it in a phased approach. And clearly service validation and testing will be core in testing every security scenario you can think of. Yeah. So working closely with information security management to say, what if? Yeah. So testing, absolutely an imperative that we do that sort of security testing and scenarios as well. As we bring on each individual device, we should do that. And change evaluation. Not a big change for this process, because basically what change evaluation is saying to any service that's introduced, it says, did we achieve the intended effects of this service? Were the outcomes that we specified achieved? But it also looks at unintended outcomes as well. So did we get outcomes we just didn't even envisage, which could be good? We've just noticed this massive increase in productivity that we didn't actually envisage. This is a good thing. Let's build on that. Let's use that as a good news stories, etc. Or was there any unintended outcomes that weren't good? Didn't expect that to happen. Well, let's learn from that. And that's what change evaluation is about. Did we achieve the outcomes, and what unintended ones, positive or negative, did we have? And let's learn from them as we're rolling the next things out. Let's not keep repeating the same lessons learned, basically, building on the good things and not building on the bad things. Knowledge management is going to be a crucial one. Yeah. So we've got all these people now bringing their own devices. And how do we usually find a solution when our own device doesn't work as it should? We Google it, yeah? And then the next person is Googling it, and the next person's Googling it, all spending time trying to find a solution. If you have knowledge-centred support in your organisation, which one of its premises is that everybody's responsible for knowledge, or contribution, it's a new word, or contributing knowledge. If I've Googled something and I went, yeah, that worked, to connect or do whatever I wanted to do in my device, I put it into knowledge management. And it becomes shared, so the expert doesn't have to keep Googling until they find it. The more knowledge about how to support each of these BYOD devices that can be in knowledge management is going to take a lot of heat off the service desk. If you're expecting the service desk to support all of these devices, you might not, and I'll come on to that in a moment. But even if you're not expecting them to, people will ring them. You know, I've done 5 Google searches, can't find them, just ring the service desk. They're going to use them. What? Never even heard of it. Yeah. So the more knowledge you can take, the better. Also, your knowledge management needs to say, where is the policy? Where is the service level agreement? Where can I find a list of devices that are approved to be connected? So all of that information should be in knowledge management and accessible to people, letting people put knowledge in as they discover it. Yes, then it gets validated and gets marked as an approved piece of knowledge within the knowledge management repository. But a real core one, because if you just think about it, you release all these devices and all these new apps onto personal devices and they're not working, the service desk is just going to get flooded with calls they just can't cope with. So a really big one to consider. So some considerations for our service transition. Change management needs to start asking different questions. Testing the evaluation would be heavy on security scenarios, etc. And knowledge management is going to be a biggie. If you don't have it already, we need to get that in place. So what about service operation? For most of service operation, probably not as big a change as to some of the other processes. Let's have a look at them. So event management and incident management. The key thing for these two processes, and particularly event management, is working closely with security, information security, say what security events do we need to pick up and where the hell do they go? Yeah? Which ones are we converting into incidents because we need to act on them? And where are they being sent? Because we may have a lot of the apps on these devices and a lot of these devices being supported by third-party providers. Can we send a ticket to their service management environment? Is it bi-directional? So incident management needs to start thinking about all of those interactions, if you like, with third-party incident management processes, rather than it just get lost in a black hole. We can't afford these security issues to get lost in a black hole. We need to act on them and act on them quick because of the risks that BYOD does bring. So we need to manage them. And therefore then problem management needs to kick in and again work closely with information security to mitigate the chance that those security incidents happen never again. We just can't repeat them, we can't afford the risk to the organisation. So not great changes to those processes, just a different consideration because of the nature of the event and the nature of the incidents, the nature of the problems that may now be resulting because of what we've just introduced to the organisation. We might not have had that before. Yeah. If our environment was totally confined, we're now basically opening it up. Request fulfillment. We should put in place in request fulfillment, standard requests for pre-approved devices to be connected to the network. And one of the things, service asset and configuration management, I knew there was something I'd missed on that slide, should be doing as well, is when a device does connect, that it checks the configuration of the device that's being connected, so that someone hasn't jailbreaked it or whatever, or changed something. It is as we thought it would be when it's trying to connect to the environment. So auto discovery should be saying, yeah, it's an iPhone, whatever, it's an approved device, but is its configuration as we expected it to allow it to connect? So request fulfillment should be, standard requests for pre-approved devices. I don't want to have to wait 8 weeks to get my device to connect it to the network when it's an approved device. To make it a smooth process. Access management, working very closely with information security about making sure that corporate data and applications are only being accessed by people who have been approved to access them via their approved device. My device might be approved, but I might not have access to all of the corporate data and applications that Alana has access to because of who I am in the organisation. So access management very much focused on identity management and rights management, so the right people are having access to the right information and not the other way around. Service desk and support. It's a biggie. What are you going to do with the service desk? And there's lots of different answers. There's no right answer. Are the service desks going to be asked to support all of the devices and applications that you're allowing as part of BYOD? The answer might be yes, they will. Other answers are, it's hybrid. They will do some of them, the most common maybe, and will outsource support for the others. It's an option. It may be, we don't support them. You're on your own, guys. If you want BYOD, you're on your own. Productivity issues there, of course. But it's a valid decision. If the organisation says, yes, that's what we're going to do. It could be best efforts. We will try our best, but then you're on your own. Or it could be we outsource all support for BYOD to third parties. Yeah, outsource it to some experts. It might be that the service desk is the first point of call, they just do the common things, first line resolution, and then it just goes very quickly up to second level, which is external to the organisation. It could be time box. Some organisations said we'll spend 30 minutes on it, 60 minutes then. So there's lots of different options. So and there's no right answer, we just need to think clearly about how we're going to support all of these different devices that we're now allowing to come into the organisation. The key thing is to make sure the service desks know what they're supposed to be supporting. I see some smiles there, So what do I support and don't I support? And that the organisation knows the same. Where do I go to get support? And what's the agreement in order to get that support? And this again, going back to knowledge management, will be key to tell me what's supported and what's not supported. And knowledge management, hopefully, we've got good self-help, which should be the first port of call to help me resolve issues that I've got. And the other key thing is when the service desks do get a call, that they know exactly where it's got to go to, and quickly, because what the nature it might be about. And the service desk need to know categorically what devices are supported and what isn't. So some key decisions need to be made in the organisation around service desk and provision of support as well. And finally, continual service improvement. I apologise for the quality in this slide, it didn't really come out very well. Like any other service, BYOD as a service should be subject to continual service improvement. Lessons learned, getting information from incident management, problem management, demand management, where's the trends going, etc. And the other thing I didn't mention for service asset and configuration management and service desk is think about having a pool of loan devices. When my iPhone breaks and I can't, can I get a loan device while I'm getting my phone fixed that I can utilise to carry on doing my work? So we need to keep improving BYOD, learn from all the other processes as they put input into continual service improvement. So just to summarise, all of the processes, we've just hit all 26, I said there's a lot more in depth, you could look at each of them. Some processes are impacted or there's more considerations for some than for others. For some it's a big implication that we need to think about. Especially things like security, obviously. Information security is the biggest problem. BYOD policy, vitally important to get that right. As I said, make it no nonsense, say it as it is, put a positive angle on it, make sure it's clearly visible, it's in people's faces so they know what their obligations are and what the organisation is as well. And what I am allowed to do as opposed to what I'm not allowed to do. And when it gets updated, make sure people know about it. We need to think as part of service portfolio management, who are we giving this to, what are we giving them, where are we giving them access to, what data, what apps, etc. When are we going to need to give devices or allow devices to connect? When are we going to have to look at capacity management? Asking why are they trying to use that device to connect, and what is the business driver, because if there isn't one, should we be doing it? How are they trying to connect? And questions and answers, knowledge management being a key support for a BYOD environment. Should be my first point of call. and the saviour of the service desk. And the big decision is, how am I going to support this environment? Who's going to do it? How am I going to do it? And making sure that everybody is aware of what's supported and what's not, and where they go. Yeah, so those avenues are absolutely clear. Think about some of the implications as your organisation does start to move into a BYOD environment. It does bring productivity, it is increasing employee engagement, it is attracting and retaining talent and engaging that talent, and that's what we all want. Yeah? So when it comes, embrace it. Thank you.